Great. Well, good afternoon. Great to be here once again. George and I are going to do a bit of a double act today. So I'm going to speak for the first half hour about the individualist movement in general, and he will speak about with justice for all a little later. I think as libertarians, certainly it's been my experience, that we ask ourselves the question, can human nature be changed? A lot of what we do would require changes in human nature to accomplish our purposes. And is it worthwhile? Is it a feasible possibility? I don't know. I've been trying to do it for something like the last 33 years. I would say with almost a remarkable lack of success. But nevertheless, I keep on trying. And a lot of people, particularly in this room, find that unusually trying. But the individualist movement is yet one more effort in this long struggle to perhaps try and change human nature. Earlier this year, I had perhaps you'd call it a Saul of Tarsus moment. I think it was sometime in January, where I realized that there was constant references to the Communist Manifesto all throughout the government's communications with us and in many articles. But I realized I couldn't think of what the libertarian equivalent of the Communist Manifesto was. What occurred to me that the polar opposite of a communist is an individualist. And I thought, well, then perhaps I can just sit down and try and compose what I would call an individualist manifesto in opposition to the Communist Manifesto. I did so, and it constantly keeps disappearing. And I showed this document to my friend George Werner. We get together once a week in Jeffreys Bay for a chat. And he liked the document a lot. He said, well, maybe we should take this a little further. And in a small coffee shop in Jeffreys Bay, the individualist movement was born as a means of carrying forward the ideas in the Individualist Manifesto as produced there. And the intention is really to give a home and a voice to those individuals who insist on personal independence and respect. So it's not for everybody. It's hopefully quite a few people in this room. It's a means of basically defining what defines us. And it defines how we expect to be treated, how we agree to treat others. It's a statement of our principles, and I'm very strong on principles. It's not, and particularly after recent experiences, never will be a political party. It's not a religion or cult. It's simply a defining mechanism for a group of like-minded individuals. It's a common set of principles. So, in thinking about this, we decided that the individualist movement would rather seek commitment from its members than just simply members. It would rather go for action rather than just simply a large group of people who could be communicated with via an email list. Originally, and I've got to be honest, based on one of my favorite TV series, The Sons of Anarchy, originally the entrance criterion was going to be that you had to get a tattoo. Several people pointed out that was a bit harsh, and actually that they would never think of getting a tattoo for an organization, anything so reversible. So we finally agreed on a large membership fee, a 500 Rand membership fee. The theory being that if you were going to join the movement, you were going to have to think about it. You were going to have to decide whether it was worth committing 500 Rand to or not. And this has been wildly successful. We have 9 members at this point in time. But prospective members perhaps in contradiction of the libertarian philosophy, but we do ask them, and on the website they must specifically tick that they do agree with the principles of the individualist movement, and that they will attempt to be bound by them into the future. And yeah, whether that's a good idea or not, I'm happy to debate. But the bottom line is that we're looking for doers rather than talkers. The libertarian movement in its past has a huge number of talkers, I think, but not that many active doers. There are, of course, organizations within the group, things like the FMF and the IRR and things like that, who are wonderfully active, but amongst the libertarians themselves, perhaps not so much. So this movement has a very flat management structure based on the swarm-wise philosophy, I think it was, developed by Rick Falkfinger. It's well worth reading. We owe to Skulk Domel, who was a libertarian member here, who introduced us to it. And there's on the website, and I'll show you where and when. I wonder if there's anything I can do to stop this. Oh, it's my computer that's going into sleep mode. Yeah, okay, let me. There we go. Okay, so sorry. Never sleep. There we go. Yeah, I highly recommend this to any organization that wants to run a very flat structure in which people can simply get on with doing things rather than working through a hierarchy. So within this structure, nobody gets to tell anybody what to do. We don't have a president or a chairman who instructs or anything like that. We have an exco, which is Clive Coetzee, George Werner and myself, but that's really for the sake of sending emails out and getting things done. We don't have any great set of powers. You lead by inspiring others to do stuff rather than by instructing them as to what to do. Hopefully we don't have regrets, we don't have blame games, we don't operate from hindsight. Mistakes will unquestionably happen, probably have happened already. We just learn from them and we'll move on. One of the key ideas is 1, 2, 3, go. So if 3 people support an idea within the organization, then they can do it. They can take accountability and exercise authority to accomplish whatever it is that they're saying. And from our perspective, asking permission for something is asking somebody else to take responsibility for your own idea and to take accountability for your actions. And we don't encourage it. So, what is the defining document of the liberty movement? And I might have missed something out there. I don't know. Is there anybody who can suggest what is the defining document of the libertarians, of the liberty movement, of the thing we think we are? My best guess was Atlas Shrugged, but it's a bit long.
There's a little passage at the end of We the Living that's quite inspiring.
Well, interestingly enough, Ayn Rand addressed that problem, and she actually sat down and did write a paper which she thought would be the defining document of this movement. I think I have a reference to it there somewhere. But it's long, it's something like 40 pages, and being Ayn Rand, it's quite intricate. But if you look around, the Communist Manifesto has inspired communists and socialists for well over 100 years. It sits there, it's well defined, you can go and look it up in the British Library. The Freedom Charter has inspired socialists and communists in this country for at least 70 years and is a constant source of advice and inspiration to our government to this day. The Magna Carta is a document that inspires the English. The American Declaration of Independence inspires the Americans. And basically, as flawed as they might be, these are nevertheless references, documents that people of a particular persuasion can use to buttress their case, to support their position. So that is one of the reasons for why I sat down and tried to write that. I've done this several times over the many years. But my problem that I was addressing, and once again, please feel free to argue this with me, is I believe that libertarians are a fringe group. We don't have a clear identity. We've debated this at length on our email discussion group, and the best definition of libertarian that I could come up with was that is a person who favors individual liberty. Anything more specific than that begins to exclude groups within the broad ambit of the organization. But this includes just about everyone. I bet you it includes the entire South African cabinet. I'm sure they all favor individual liberty. Bigger problem is that we often say that we favor individual liberty without articulating the full implications of that statement. And I tried to make it a start towards that at last year's seminar by showing what a true anarchy would look like and showing clips from this video, Sons of Anarchy. Well, I couldn't get past the gun running bit. Okay, there's a clip of them selling guns to the general public, and there was a horrified reaction from about half of the audience. Granted that many of them were from Wakkerstroom. But there was a general, or at least it felt that way to me, others might have interpreted it differently, there was a general sense of, we couldn't allow men on motorbikes to sell guns to each other, or to the general public. And I was thinking, actually, it's legal in South Africa at this very point in time. There's lots of people selling guns to lots of other people. How could there be such a horrified reaction to this? So what I really wanted was to be able to say, yep, you can sell guns, you can do this, you can do that, because it's okay in terms of the manifesto that I put my faith in. The big problem for us is that we live in constant fear of the authority that we so despise. And we do so little that actually challenges them, that actually calls into question the wrong statements and the wrong ideas that they force down our throats. Once again, I would say that organizations like the FMF, like the IRR, are fighting a wonderfully valiant battle. But as far as I know, the FMF cannot identify itself as libertarian, and the IRR very, very rarely will identify itself as libertarian. So the problem is, what are us libertarians doing? As I mentioned some time ago, I produced, really based on a discussion at a seminar with Leon, produced a thing called the consent axiom. And we've had some heated debates around this particular consent axiom. And it was an attempt to better define what libertarians believed in. So far, the non-aggression principle has been probably the clearest statement of the libertarian position. It's basically an American statement, and you can find 1,000 versions of it on the internet, but it's severely limited. If you adopted that as a principle, you couldn't do most of the things we love. You couldn't play rugby, you couldn't indulge in martial arts, for example, because all of those involve aggression against others, and it's not allowed. So the consent axiom, although this seems a bit of a detail, I thought was pretty important in resolving that fundamental issue. But it had its own problems. It was a bit crisper and clearer than the non-aggression principle. But it didn't address several important issues. It didn't really come up with answers to your right to life, to the respect for private property, to the handling of conflict and resolution of disputes. They were kind of implicit in there if you worked through it hard enough, but they weren't very explicit. So all of those issues, I would like to believe, are brought together now in the Individualist Manifesto as a single document you can refer to that addresses all those shortcomings in the consent axiom. The question is, why the Individualist rather than the Libertarian Manifesto? And I think some of it comes out of the debates we've had on LIPSA and the general problems with defining the word libertarian. If you go to Wikipedia, for example, the first entry in Wikipedia says that libertarian was first coined by the libertarian socialists around about the time of the the Communist Revolution, but its meaning has changed in recent times within the United States. So that word started out as a definition of a socialist, of a libertarian socialist. And to this day, it remains a problem. Libertarians tend to be identified with the Republican Party, with the American right, and it has its own political context already. Whereas the word individualist has almost no context whatsoever at this point in time. So I chose the individualist man as a term for a general description of a class of people, I suppose. Now, when you, as a libertarian, get asked, so, what's a libertarian? Anybody ever been asked that question? Several times. Could I ask, perhaps, what is the best answer? Does anybody want to put forward an answer? What is a libertarian? When somebody asks you from a recent memory of a discussion, how did you begin to answer?
Radical belief in freedom. That's one happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that is the point. I can show you my notes here. Some start with the non-aggression principle. Okay, we don't allow coercion. No initiation of coercion. And there's, several 3 and 4 syllable words in there already. Some to begin by describing the consent axiom, possibly Leon and me and one other. But many of us will start by giving examples of what we mean. We're against taxation. We're in favor of widespread, we're in favor of the free use of drugs, for example, and that sort of thing. But we can't actually, crystallize it in a short conversation. Once again, that is, despite all efforts, what I'm trying to get at with this Individualist Manifesto. So the Communist Manifesto is basically defined in one sentence: from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. As a communist, you simply quote that and a whole flood of associations and connections will be made by your listener, and particularly if they're a poor, underprivileged person, they will think, wow, right on, I'm there. The apparent logic and fairness of that phrase has, I believe, made communism spectacularly successful around the world in the last 100 years. I think we need a corresponding and competitive phrase. Mine isn't as simple and sweeping, but it has fewer words in it. And it's essentially respect for the individual, request consent, recognize my property, and resolve disputes by jury. And I would like to think that covers most issues. And if you don't think that, please talk to me. I would love to hear more about it. Of course, there are thousands of grey areas still to be resolved. What about abortion? What about inequality, etc., etc.? Pollution. There are many grey areas that will need to be resolved, that can be resolved. But you don't win converts by first listing all the difficulties with your proposition. You try and begin by listing the advantages. So, like any document of this nature, it is subject to change over time. This is already version 2. I was floating a version 3 around here, which took it from the first person voice to the second person voice. And by a vote of 5 to 1, we've decided to kind of keep it that way. This may or may not be important to a lot of people. So, if you would like to join us, then you can visit this website. Perhaps like Individualist movement, it's not particularly pretty, but it's full of information. And you can sign up here at the invitation to join the Individualist movement. You can find various discussions about why you might want to. But most, perhaps for the Free Market Foundation and others, I went to quite a lot of trouble to develop a long link of civil society links in South Africa. So this is 47, I think it is, 49 civil societies that I could find on the web in one way or the other in South Africa. And the reason I did that was because we have a death of politics conference that we are proposing. Well, perhaps to step back, as the Individualist movement, we undertake various projects. This is a list of the projects that we are thinking of at the moment. And the two primary projects on that list are this Death of Politics conference that we're proposing for next year in March, and the With Justice for All program. Just very briefly on the Death of Politics conference, what we want to do is organize a large conference of as many of the NGOs in South Africa as possible that take an interest in issues of freedom, individual freedom and liberty, and bring them together to discuss ways of going forward in this country alternative to politics. So pretty much every discussion that you will sit down in that discusses a future for this country says, well, join the DA, form a political party. If you're very conservative, go to the Freedom Front. But do something political. Some even suggest joining the ANC. And I don't think, and I've been responsible for 4 political parties in this checkered career. And I now think that is the wrong way to go. And I would like us to talk about alternatives to politics in a big, serious discussion. So this is going to involve lots of support from people like the Institute of Race Relations, from AgriForum, from AgriSACA, from many of these organizations, we sincerely hope from the Free Market Foundation, who will put forward ideas, put forward speakers, put forward money, send delegates to this conference, which is coming up on the 13th of March next year, and runs all the way through to the Ides of March, which I thought was a nice political ending for it.
Can we kill someone?
Yeah, well, let's kill Caesar. Right, so that's a quick description. I have 2 minutes for questions. Are there any questions? Andrew? And then, yeah, Andrew?
Quick points. I think it's a redundancy to speak about individual liberty. There can be no liberty except for individual liberty. You just have to say liberty. You say that I won't say whether it's libertarian. They're spelt out with crystal clarity. I was at the latest council meeting what they stand for, and they say we're classic liberals, just like me. Now, as far as I can see, the difference between a classic liberal and a libertarian...
Sorry, just slow down a little. What was that organization?
South African Institute of
Institute of Race Relations.
Following on from Kane Berman, they said we're classic liberals.
Yeah.
Okay, and as far as I can see, the difference between a classic liberal and a libertarian is this, that the classic liberal, including me, does believe that there should be some sort of state which has monopoly, powers of monopoly force, and the libertarian doesn't. As far as I can see, that is the ultimate distinction between the two. Am I allowed to join the Individualist, sign up for the Individualist Manifesto, agreeing with all of those points, but stating my beliefs as a classic liberal?
If you respect me and my independence, if you request my consent before doing something to me, if you recognize the property that I have legal title to, and you kind of agree to resolve disputes by jury to be explained, you're up, you're good. There's nothing that says what political party you would be, or what your belief in government might be. But what it would say is that your government, I suppose in a perfect world, or at least in terms of this, can't show up at my door and take my money. That's all that we would say.
You don't have to pay tax.
It's a consensual thing. I might well pay tax, but it would have to be consensual. Sorry, there was another question of... yes, yeah?
Terry, we've met before, and I've seen that list.
Yeah.
Then, looking through it, there's nothing there which any reasonable, sensible person could object to, except for the matter of solving the disputes by jury. And there is no principle, which I think is wrong with that. I think it's the practice. Are you seriously suggesting that a dispute, serious or trivial, occurs, and you can actually round up a jury of 6 or 10 or whatever you might like, people who are intelligent enough to work on this and have the time to do it? I just cannot see that it is practical.
It's a good point. George has also written quite a long expansion of that concept, and under the I think it's under this comments all of these points are expanded in some detail. The reason it's there is that, for me at least, one of the biggest problems with our current system and organization is that the common man has no real easy access to law. And whatever access to law he gets is in fact provided by government. They define the courts, the procedures, the judges who will sit in judgment on a jury, and they completely exclude the two individuals who are in dispute from that process. So what is a libertarian individualist alternative to that? Well, you rely on individuals. As an individual, and I won't go in any length of this, I will pick 6 people or 10 people. I'll need to come to an agreement with my opposite. But let's say, standard thing, I'll pick 6 people, they're my jurors. He picks 6 people, they're his jurors. The decision as to who has the casting vote will be taken randomly. I would better pick 6 reasonable people, he better pick 6 reasonable people, otherwise we will never come to a resolution, and the intention is to come to a resolution. I may have the wrong end of the stick, and these 12 people may say, Trevor, you got the wrong end of the stick, you're wrong, and they'll come to a decision. It won't have to wait on court calendars and all sorts of other things. It will be, I would like to think, a quick and painless process. Absolutely, I don't know if it would work. It needs to be tested. We need to get into some kind of libertarian utopia and see how long it takes to form a jury. Of course, all of that is true. I take your opposition or your question, but I think let's take it offline further, if we can.
But my point, if I may,
sure.
the last part of it, and I'll
Sure.
be brief,
Sorry.
is that it implies that there are people standing around. You say, oh, I pick you, I pick you. Who are these people?
At the moment, they're arbitrators, professional arbitrators, and there's many of them. No difficulty in finding them. Certainly, there are in many countries. It's a common characteristic of African resolutions, is that if there is a dispute, a bunch of respected members of the community will gather under a tree called an imbiza. The 2 guys, parties to the dispute, will appear before them, and the rules and procedures of regulation are completely defined by the people under the tree. Okay, they may differ wildly from one valley to the next, but I live in that valley and I come under that tree because I agree to that imbiza. That's the kind of background to this process.
Okay, thanks.
Leon.
Yeah, I just also want to say I think that, frankly, the idea that there must be a jury is nonsense. I don't know why libertarians have adopted this.
They haven't, just me.
Well, no, quite a lot of libertarians talk about, one of the sort of nonsenses libertarians babble on about is juries and the gold standard. but nonetheless, I would say no to the jury. For what it's worth, there is a Libertarian manifesto. Murray Rothbard wrote one. The problem is that it's 430 pages long.
And it doesn't show up on the internet, because, gee, I look for them.
Absolutely. It's called For a New Liberty, a Libertarian Manifesto.
Oh, okay. Rothbard.
Rothbard, I just want to say, that just to get a little technicality right, is the Free Market Foundation has got no constraint at all calling itself libertarian or classical liberal. I just said I personally, as opposed to me personally, I think for me to go and stand up at a conference of, on energy or something and say, by the way, my energy policy is libertarian, is just wasting hot air. So I personally describe what I want, and labeling it classical liberal, libertarian or capitalist or whatever. I'm not here to fight for the English language. I'm here to fight for freedom. And I don't feel very strongly about what one calls it.
I'm pleased to hear that.
That's me.
Yeah.
The rest of the free market.
I suspect Eustace might have a few reservations there as well.
No. Well, let me just make this. It might come as a surprise to everybody to know that in the Free Market Foundation we believe in freedom. And you might also note that when Martin van Staden over here says something, we say it as ourselves. Leon Lowe says, Martin van Staden.
You don't issue statements on behalf of the FMF?
Very rare. It does happen, but it's actually very rare that the FMF says anything about
absolve themselves in most of the cases.
Yeah, okay, well, yeah. We say amazing stuff, but we take no responsibility for it.
No, we don't mind that at all. I'm just telling you that when Martin van Staden, he's not subject to my discipline. I might be his boss, but he's free to say anything he likes.
This is wonderful. This is swarm-wise management. I highly recommend it to you. Gail?
Well, I want to say the problem with that is by not describing yourself and your position, others do it for you. And of course, the labels that spokesmen for the free market get are not flattering. They put spokesmen, like Leon and others in boxes. Oh, you're supporting the capitalists and the this or that. So others define where you don't yourself. I mean, that's all very well to say your position defines you.
That's a lovely line. I will use it. Others will define if you yourself don't. Gee whiz, remind me of that.
Write it down now.
Okay, don't want to cut too much into George's talk, so George will introduce himself and do whatever else it takes.
It's just the wrong time to do a presentation.
Oops, oh yes, where is it? Won't you take it off? Can't see it. There you go. Oh yes, somebody take a photograph, damn it. No, I'll get, well, I need to be in it.
Clip it on.
Okay, you put that away. You see, like the Christians, how well we work together. Right.
Photo opportunity. Photo opportunity.
Oh, right. How long does it take?
Yeah, like I said, it's such a wrong time of the day to do a presentation, and I'm really going to try and do it as quickly as possible.
It's better than earlier.
Okay. My name is George Werner, and my career has always been in management. I'm a management training consultant. I present courses like project management, risk management, and problem solving, and things like that. And Justice for All, the training course Justice for All, is still one of my favorite courses to present. It's really very, very, very close to my heart. I had my practical experience at Sasol and Secunda, and I was one day ordered to attend a course by Mark Swanepoel on Justice for All. I was very reluctant to go because my studies was in the human sciences. I couldn't see a reason why I should go to a course on business and economic principles. It was a Damascus experience, the most life-changing week that I had with Mark in the Justice for All program. And that's where I actually practically became a libertarian. For the first time in my life, things were making sense to me. And I'm experiencing the same with the people that now are attending that course. 3 weeks ago, I did a course in Port Elizabeth for 8 individuals, 8 black people, for 4 different companies. And the first day was really, really, really challenging. The K word was used frequently, and it wasn't me, because otherwise I wouldn't have been here, I would have been in jail. I had one of the guys is quite a senior official in NAMSA, and declared himself to be a Marxist and in favor of 100% government control. By the way, he worked for Volkswagen. I said, I must take you to Berlin in Germany and show you what a car looks like that it was built under communist rule. And they were saying such things as, you know, after so many years of liberation, we are still Kafirs. That's what he said to me. I'm quoting him word by word. He says, we are still second-class citizens. It's blacks that lives in townships, in shacks, and bad schools, and we're not near what close to what whites have. And they said to me, if you want to talk to me free enterprise, you must level the playing field. They said to me, you're like a 100-mile race. The whites are at the 80th mile, and we're still here at North Mile. So how can we start businesses? How can we participate in the free market? So I was challenged the whole day. And really, after the 3rd day when we left, the mood has changed from despondency. I have seen the same despondency in the 1980s, but now for a different reason. When blacks, at the height of apartheid with the P.W. Botha regime, there was also a despondency. And at the end of the course, I saw hope. We can change. We can make a difference. And I've experienced this with this 8 individuals that I've been with. I really think that the Justice for All program is one of the most brilliant programs that I've ever encountered. I think Mark Swanepoel left a legacy of note when he developed that course, because things are being explained. I don't know how well you know the program. I'm going to, just a 5 minutes, shows you a promotional video that we have. It's sort of a summary of the program. But with such contentious issues, we are slaughtering holy cows. The minimum wage law, the trade unions, that you know, they believe that they are the tools that will ensure us higher wages. We're slaughtering that holy cows in that program. And you know, one of what we do is, before the course starts, we let people complete the questionnaire that you've just completed it with Trevor. And it's very rare for them to score 40-50% in that pre-questionnaire. And then when we finished, it's all close in the 80s, 90s to 100%. And to give you one example, there was the belief that poor people doesn't pay tax. It's the middle class and rich people and companies that pay tax. So we as poor people can just, the middle class and rich people have an obligation to look after us as poor people. They are the people that pay tax. So we explain to them, we ask them the question, every time that you go to Pick n Pay to buy groceries, who is paying, where does the money come from that Pick n Pay in company tax to the government? And there's all sorts of answers, like, no, it comes out of the owners pay it, but where do they actually get the money? And now they're learning for the first time that what the government puts in your one pocket, it is already taken out from the other pocket. They were horrified to learn that how poor people are subsidizing rich and middle class people to fly all in South African Airways. They were angry with that. The government must stop doing that. So it is really a wonderful, wonderful program that break down and educate people and give, and I think the most important of this is that it gives people hope. There's an alternative, because we can't see a way out now. It's the same despondency that I saw in the 1980s when I presented this course. Because we've revived it now. In the 1980s and 1990s, the Free Market Foundation have received grants from, I think it was Anglo-American, Sasol and GenCore, and developed this course. And really we sold it to a lot of companies. And I myself implemented it at Sasol too. And I saw how people afterwards come to me and says, we have hope for this country again. And so people are sort of thinking there is really a solution. So the way that we work, the way that I did it, was that I organized this workshop in September, free of charge, no charge involved in that, for companies to actually evaluate the course, to send people, that's the way that I actually got them to be there. And then I say, okay, there's going to be a follow-up instructor's course, a train-the-trainer course, but the precondition for that is that you must purchase the program and then being trained as an instructor. It's a good selling technique, isn't it? It worked because they are buying it at the moment. They're all very keen on buying those videos. So we're going to have another one at the Free Market Foundation in Johannesburg on the 28th of November. So we're also going to ask companies to actually send. So please, if any one of you here on a position to talk to somebody of authority in companies, decision makers, ask them to come and attend. But what we also did is we've got 3 schools now lined up. We went to schools and say, listen here, do you present business economics in your school? And they said yes. And we said, okay, the module on money and inflation, can we come and present it to you? And and we've got 3 schools lined up. So because we really want to influence schools and maybe later teachers' colleges students. Because hopefully amongst them, the future South African President or Minister of Finance will be there, and we can be influenced, like I believe Margaret Thatcher was influenced in her thinking. Wasn't she a member of the Mount Peleus Society as well? Or some...
Institute of Economic Affairs.
Yes, and that influenced her thinking. So we would like to get to people that in the future might influence other people. Okay, what else I wanted to say? Oh yeah, we received a wonderful reference from Dr. Dani van Mark, who was the HR manager at a company in Port Elizabeth, Parmalat, the dairy companies. And he's very excited about the fact that we are reviving the whole program. He's of the belief, and he wrote us a letter to that extent, that he thinks that Justice for All was responsible for developing or being instrumental in a close relationship between management and workers and the trade union. And he said it was almost like a scientific experiment, because Parmalat have 5 other factories in the country, and the relationships in those factories were very, 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 very stressed. He said there was almost war when it comes to wage negotiations. Port Elizabeth didn't have any problems with wage negotiations. They didn't have any problems to get the workers to buy in on a cost-saving campaign and things like that. So we received that wonderful reference and testimony from Dr. Dani van Mark. Okay, so we quickly show this, just 5 minutes, what's the program all about. It's 8 to 1. For you that doesn't know the program, it actually consists of 8 one-hour videos explaining economic principles and some business principles.
Just, this is available here on the website, so if you want to show it to anybody else or see it in more detail, you can just simply come to the website. Let's just move this back to the beginning. Okay.
We're just going to show about 5 minutes.
Justice for all. In this presentation, we will look at basic economic and business principles. See that if we understand and live by these principles, then everybody will be better off. We will see that economics is not a fight between winners and losers, but that it is about working together. We will see how the worker, as well as the businessman, the poor man, as well as the rich man, will win. If we live by these principles, then the consumer is king. And we will have a system where there is truth, justice for all.
Research has shown that people in general have very little understanding of economics and how businesses operate. Workers believe that they receive low wages because businessmen are exploiting them. They think that most businesses make very high profits. And their sometimes unrealistic wage demands are based on this assumption. Consumers, on the other hand, are confronted by ever-rising prices, which they blame on the greed of profit-seeking enterprises. Businessmen are seen as profiteers, whose wealth is obtained at the expense of workers and consumers. At the same time, black workers see free enterprise and apartheid as one and the same oppressive system. They become easy targets for radicals and revolutionaries who would like to make the country ungovernable. As a result of these misconceptions, exceptions, enormous damage is done to the economy, resentments escalate, and political solutions become virtually impossible. In order to overcome these problems, the training division of the Free Market Foundation has developed the Justice for All video course. It consists of 8 one-hour videos in Afrikaans, English, Sesotho, Zulu and Xhosa. They explain in very simple terms exactly what the free enterprise system is and shows that we are in fact very far removed from such a system. The videos also show how a business operates, why...
You probably know all of this stuff already, so we won't keep subjecting you to it. What is quite interesting to look at is how video production was in the 1980s. Things have improved a little since then, but to redo this would cost an absolute fortune. So we rely on the quite old video. But yeah, just this is one of the projects of the individualist movement. If anybody else would like to join in with this in terms of giving the course presentations, etc.
Yeah, we are convinced that this will make a contribution to our conference that we want to organize in March, financially. And we really, those 8 people that have been through that course, I won't classify them now as libertarians that walked out of Justice for All course, but certainly we made them think. And we support them. We want to post articles of interest to them, because this guy from Lumsa made the comment, and please don't laugh about this comment, it was quite serious. Because the question arose, why is the Chinese economy blossoming to one of the biggest economies in the world? And what was his answer to that? Was that it was because of Mao Zedong under the Cultural Revolution has formed the character of the Chinese people. And that is now why the Chinese are doing so well. And now we publish an article that gives the other side of the story, why China's economy is blossoming. We've given them the link of the Free Market Foundation's YouTube channel, where they, as instructors, we said to them, you must strengthen your position as instructor, you must have as much knowledge as possible. So go to those videos of the Free Market Foundation, go to the articles, and learn and strengthen yourself as a trainer. So I'm very excited about this project. We've sold it to a company with 1,200 people, which is going to train instructors. Yeah, that's the trainer that we have trained in the most exquisite circumstances. And it's so rewarding to see people just changing and thinking differently.
He's seriously interested in libertarian philosophy now and has asked to be included in our discussion groups and things like that.
Yeah.
Might just comment, there's a series of videos on the internet from a place called MR University that are just absolutely brilliant, free market oriented videos.
MR University.
MR University.
Okay.
They've got a section on microeconomics, a section on macroeconomics and other economic issues.
Yeah.
And they're just brilliant. They're 6 to 8 minutes long, and there's also sets of questions and so on if you want to.
Yeah. The Free Market Foundation was kind enough to donate 500 books to us of Dr. Richard Grant. And we have handed out to a number of people already. And I have even one report of somebody reading it. But our ideas with the school is actually to donate some of that books for the top students in business economics as a book prize. And schools like that. And we have decided to actually give it to, or at a very reduced price, to offer it to schools to actually buy. Because they are also interested in other things that we discuss, like how do you form prices, reasons for unemployment, tools and productivity, money and inflation, all this. There's a little bit of a hesitancy You'll find that interesting, Leon, is about the economics and politics. There's a module on economics and politics. Now that was manufactured before the fall of apartheid. Some company says, no, we want to show it, because there's nothing really, it's not that anybody is asking us to support a specific political party. All that we do in that module is to show the danger of unlimited government, and that you should restrict government and all of that. So there's some are hesitant to show that module, but we say to them, that's your prerogative. You can decide. But I mean, even in the 1980s, I've never had, when I presented that module, somebody walking out of my training and says, this is nonsense, or this is rubbish, or I can't wait, or you shouldn't show it.
George, how many people is an ideal number for you to train at a time, to come to the module? If I was to sell this as an idea to a company.
Yeah, you're getting, this is one course where you get interaction, because it's issues that are very close to people that they talk about. And you want as much interaction as possible. So for a 3-day course, I would maybe limit numbers to say 20 or 25. But this school, which we're going to do a presentation next Friday, they're going to put 90 pupils. But we're just going to do one module on money and inflation. And there will be about 90 pupils there.
I must add that it is, having just given the course once or twice now, it is just wonderful to see the light come on in various people's faces as you give the course. It's extremely rewarding as a kind of free marketer to have this opportunity to explain these principles to people for whom they are completely alien.
Yeah. Once I attended a presentation by, I don't know if you know the guy, Dr. Elia Goldratt. He wrote a book, The Goal. Yeah. And he developed what he called the theory of constraints, or how do you manage bottlenecks in the manufacturing process. Now, I was very privileged to attend one of his workshops that he presented here in South Africa. So you had this short, stocky Jew with a thing on the head and his cigar, pacing up and down and spitting out words of wisdom. And the one thing that he said was that many management principles is like pissing in the wind, against the wind. All that you get from it is a wet and warm feeling. So I sincerely hope that tomorrow when you leave this LibSem seminar, you're not only going to leave with a warm and wet feeling, but all of you can now make a contribution towards libertarianism by anybody in your world that might be interested to send you might know the MD of a company or a manager in a company, or you might know a head of a school, or anybody that you know that might be interested in the Johannesburg area. Please come. It's not going to cost you anything. Come to the workshop. You will meet an excellent presenter there and a brilliant program that could really change the mindset of your workers. Get your workers to be less hostile, to understand, because this is a point that we emphasize as well, why I should care for my company. Why is it important that my company maximize its profits? What do I get out of that? That's what the Justice for All program also explains. Okay, sorry.
George, is there any limitation on the level of workers? Do you specify, or do you choose, or is it anybody?
You can present it to anybody. I have presented it in Sasol to really, really senior and top managers. A very good friend of mine by the name of Otto Pepler was busy with his MBA. And he said after he watched the money and inflation module, he for the first time understood, that's a learned man, understood what causes inflation. And so, yeah, it depends how you present it. If you present it, you can present it to low-level people as well, even illiterate people. You just have to adjust it, your way of presentation, but you can do it at very different levels.
Just an observation there. In the instructor's manual, there's 8 of them. Each one comes with a suggested presentation for illiterates, for semi-educated and for educated classes, and how you tailor the course in those environments.
Yeah, just to say that we bump into people all over the show, and nobody knows how many went through it in those days. Some estimates say it could have been 1 million workers. But I bump into people all the time now people in their 50s, 60s who say they went on the course, they've never forgotten it, how much they learned. Certainly left an interesting legacy. And it's been many times people have said, why don't we still run it, why don't we do it again? I'd never entered my mind that you could use the same old videos now, but if they're working well, that's great.
It's so depressing that almost nothing has changed.
Yeah. So my email address is very easy, so I'm just going to quickly give it to you if you know of anybody that would be interested in that workshop.
Left. Mr. Solar was there, runs a big factory, huge factories. Yeah, he's gone.
Okay, can I just Mr. Saul, I'm going to be sending out to all the delegates here, I've got a spreadsheet of everybody's names and phone numbers and contact details.
Fantastic. Okay. But just 5 seconds.
Yeah, you can give that one now, but everybody will get it.
It's George at Act Now. ACTNOW. You can't forget that. Act Now. George at actnow.co.za.
If you just Google Individualist Movement, you'll get to the website. There are contact details and all that sort of thing there as well. Just for what it's worth, and I'd strongly encourage while we're here, that if you do have time, go to the website, go to the course questionnaire, and see how you do on the standard set of economic questions. If any of you get less than 17 out of 20, then you're not doing anywhere near as well as Jenny.
Jenny did very well.
It's structured in such a way that you do the question and then it marks it for you and presents you with your answers and problems with the answers.
I feel very proud that I was asked to go through all these videos at the beginning of this year to make sure there was nothing in them that would embarrass the FMF.
No, never.
I think I came up with one point, didn't I, Gav? That wasn't even terribly serious.
And it was the amount of money.
That is not important. Yeah.
But it is sad that they talk about 20 Rand for a pair of shoes.
Yeah, well, that's the relevance of that.
Just one more comment.
Okay.
Trevor and I this morning had breakfast at the George Market, and we saw a book, this is the title of the book, and the title of the book was Don't Try to Save a Fish from Drowning. Which I would say is a good thing to say. Don't do futile things. Either think a little bit about that. Don't try and save a fish from drowning. And please, you can really make a difference by encouraging people to actually come on this workshop. Thanks a lot. No, I'm not going to say
Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks, Trevor.